Hello, welcome. Conversations with Veronica. I'm your host, Veronica Andrews. We're here to question a mayoral candidate. For anybody who doesn't know or know why she wants to be mayor, Kerstin Lochrie, see, that's right. And you would think I would know it. Why do you want to be mayor?
Why do I want to be mayor? That's a really good question. And the $65,000 answer is, okay, it used to be $65,000, now with inflation, right? Yeah. $65,000 answer is that I think the incumbent has done a good job of uniting the city, and now it's time to propel the city forward. Our school system is on the cusp of being absolutely one of the best in the state and even in the nation. And it's not going to take a lot to get it there. And I know how to do that. With the teachers' help and the administration's help, I know how to do that. I know that because I've listened, I've asked a lot of questions, and because my third child just finished from the school system last spring.
So is it effort, unity, or money?
That's a good question. I think, honestly, Veronica, it's all three. The effort.
Good answer.
Thank you. So the effort is that there are teachers who want the best for our children. There are administrators, there are principals, assistant principals, paras, all of whom want the best for our children. The unity is, I sense, through discussing with all of the above, that the teachers and the administrators are not unified. There is a feeling amongst all that there is a lack of respect. That's not something that I tolerate well. And the money issue isn't a hard one. Special ed, you and I both know special ed, is always going to be there. And to tell teachers and to tell parents, well, you should have known that this was going to come up before, doesn't necessarily answer the question. There's a fund called the Circuit Breaker account, which is for families on Mass Health. There are children in said school system, PT, OT, speech, who are receiving services, and the school system can bill out to Mass Health for those services. That money is called the circuit breaker. It's sent back to the school system.
No, it's sent back to the city.
It's sent back to the school city. Thank you for correcting me.
General fund.
It's sent back to the general fund. Thank you for correcting me.
Doesn't necessarily benefit. I worked hard on that one.
Yes, you did work hard on that one. It's sent back to the city, and it goes into
General fund.
the general fund, and it should be restricted. It should not be unrestricted, which means used for anything. It should be restricted. It should go back to the school. If those students are receiving services so that they can flourish in our schools, then that money should be coming back to the schools. It costs us money to hire speech therapists. It costs us money to hire occupational therapists, physical therapists. There was a motion out toward the end of the last year in one of the school committee meetings where there was a definite need to hire someone who was familiar with working with children who are not sighted or who have significant sight issues, such as someone from the Perkins School for the Blind. And the rationale behind that is twofold. Number one, we can keep those students in-house, so we're saving money. And number two, we can tuition other students in, so it becomes a gain to us. It was shot down. Not helpful.
Do you have to sign a paper that allows them to build Mass Health?
Yes, and
we should have put a cortisol on that ourselves, but only if it goes into the general fund, out of the general fund and back to the schools.
Well, you're absolutely right.
No, I never thought of it. Never thought of it. I didn't realize it didn't go back to the schools. I thought it did.
I actually only found out maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And this was after two of my children had been receiving Mass Health services, and I had signed off for the school to bill for those services. That's number one, you're absolutely right. And number two is, within the Woburn Public School systems, there are a minimum of 63 languages being spoken. So how do we tell many of those people who might typically be on Mass Health, this would help bring money in, but then you're right. So we inform parents that this could help bring money in, but not to us, but to someone else.
And with those 63 different nationalities, you have about 40 different speeches. So not
Dialects, yep.
only do you need a physical therapist, you need a physical therapist in the language of that child. So it's hard enough to find good therapy. It's almost impossible to find translators.
Absolutely. There are many who speak Spanish as a first language or a second language. There are some who speak Creole, which is a derivative of French.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find people who speak other languages? Portuguese, I guess, I guess the needs for the Portuguese-speaking community is being met somewhat here, somewhat.
Electronically, we just had a wedding at City Hall where both bride and groom were deaf. And they wanted translators, and the groom did not speak English.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, almost impossible.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, they worked very hard. We went after every possible avenue that we could find, and they got it off the internet.
Really?
And they were able to use a wide screen so that everybody could see the words as well as have them implemented by sign.
Nice.
But that's going to happen in our schools. That's going to happen in City Hall, to pay your taxes, to ask a question about fire and police are up against the same thing.
Sure they are.
Yeah.
Because you have, God forbid you have a fire, the fire on Sturgis Street, the fire in off Locust Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I happen to know that I have friends living in the apartment complex on Locust Street, many of whom are not from this country. They're from the continent of Africa. There is Nigerian spoken, there's Ugandan spoken, there is proper French spoken from people who live in the country of Cameroon. How do you do that?
You look at the cafeteria here at the high school. Have you ever seen all the flags hanging from the ceiling that represent the different countries that these children come from?
Oh, yeah.
And yet talk about dedicated personnel. The principal here is learning every language possible so that not only can she identify with her students, and she asks them to teach her.
You're kidding.
No, I think that's wonderful.
I did not know that about Principal Callanan.
Yeah.
Well, I will say she is a human dynamo.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of them, but I don't think they get recognized. I don't think we appreciate them or know who they are because they've always been there. They just do their job.
And that, some of that goes back to a lack of respect. If I don't feel like if I feel as if I'm working to the best of my ability every day and no one notices me, at some point I perhaps
I think they
will not
call
work
it
as hard.
apathy.
Apathy.
On both sides.
On both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to make that better.
So what else would you want to do besides the school system? And the only thing that the mayor really controls regarding the schools is money. He has no say on, they did years ago, and then they changed it. And when Jack Rabbit was mayor, he had the right to sit in on a school committee meeting. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe he had a vote.
Okay. I don't need to be part of the voting process. The mayor should not be part of the voting process. I have managed a number of hotels. I've been in big business for many years. I've worked with not-for-profits. I've worked with some very successful and businesses and not-for-profits, and some not so much. The secret ingredient is not rocket science. It's getting out there, making sure that people are being heard, making sure that I'm saying hi, making sure that people are asking after one's children. If there's a teacher at an elementary school teacher feels so terrible father passed away the other day, former Chief Tortolano. It's making sure that I'm there with a card, with a dinner, with a how you doing. I live in North Woburn, and I walk my streets every single day. Usually I walk the dog, but I walk my streets every
Oh,
single
the
day.
dog walks you?
The dog walks me, yes. Because I need to know who's there, who lives there, who doesn't live there, who is visiting, who has questions, just to say hi to people. I was out one brutally hot day walking the dog, and I met the nicest couple right around the corner from me. They are from Nigeria. They have a little boy who is about 18 months old, and at the time they had a baby girl who was 2 weeks old.
Wow.
Lovely, 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 lovely people. Every time I walk down the street now, he says to me, "Hi, how you doing? Can I pet the dog?" Dog hates him, but that's not the point.
Well, don't you see, I see that in these people who become naturalized American citizens. Our history means more to them than it does to a native one. They respect what we take for granted because we were born here.
We absolutely were born here.
And they are more appreciative of what is available for the very same reason.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about the new fire station? You think it's necessary?
I've spoken with firefighters, and I heard the horror stories about firefighters having to put on very protective gear, PPE, personal protective equipment, to take down the ceilings, which were infested with dead vermin.
And they sleep with their boots on because the rats go over the end of the bed.
Oh, dear God. No one should have to. Oh, my.
But there's somebody here saying it's not right, and somebody here saying it's not right. Movement came last fall when 2 television stations and a newspaper story came out.
And all of a sudden,
Something was happening. But we don't do anything until a child gets hit on a street that neighbors
Mine.
had complained about.
mine was the one who got hit, delivering newspapers last fall. Mine was the one who got hit.
Anything happen to your street?
Nothing. There continue to be no additional streetlights. It was deemed that this street was well marked, and that was it.
Recently got a letter from Mr. Willett here saying how our franchise fees that we pay in.
I saw that.
I don't want them to put up any more wires or hook up any more people in Woburn. If they're going to vote to cut the budget for the Woburn support in half of what Woburn pays, then don't let them play with our telephone poles anymore.
I agree. There's just, everywhere I go, and everyone that not everyone, that's a gross overgeneralization, but there are many, many people with whom I speak who say, why don't we do this? You're absolutely right. Why don't we do something until a child gets hit? Why don't we do something until a 3-story home that's all wood frame with no break in the crawl space up above so the fire can quickly spread from one end to the end? And what does it take that for us to stand up and take notice?
But there isn't, they can't take down those other 2 houses. Those houses are older than Woburn. They were tanneries, built for the tanneries so that their staff and their workers had places to live. At one time, there were over 100 leather factories in Woburn.
I didn't know the number was that high.
Oh my goodness, probably more. I'd have to go back to John McElhaney's book.
Oh yeah, I have that book.
There
That's
were
right.
5 or 6 of them right here in the South End.
Yeah, and East Woburn.
Yeah.
Right, was heavily
Yeah,
populated.
wherever there was a stream of water, so they could use Green Street, where the Shamrock School is. There
Yeah.
was a leather factory there. Montfield Avenue, across from the high school, housing from the elderly. There was a leather factory there. Salem Street, they were on both sides of the street at Wood.
So I live in North Woburn, and there are woods behind my house, and then behind that is Kimball Courts. But in the woods behind my house, there's a rudimentary fieldstone foundation. And early records show that it was not a tannery, but it supplied the leather to shoemakers who lived about where I am now.
That's what my grandfather, I was telling my grandchildren the other day, he raised in Canada. He had to cane 10 chair seats before he could go to school.
Oh, good Lord.
And the next one down that was younger only had to cane 5. And when they left for school, there were about 15 or 16 cane seats that the mother could take and drop off at the chair factory on her way to be the maid somewhere.
To make a little bit of extra
Yeah.
money for the family
Yeah.
so that everyone could eat.
And that cane seat costs $225 to be done today.
I know. And your grandfather would probably be saying, oh my God,
Oh,
I'm sitting on a
no.
gold mine.
We used to have to scour attics to find chairs for him to cane. And he had a great big box that he would mount the chair on,
Okay.
cataracts and everything, so that he could work the chair. And by the time we drove home from Fitchburg to Woburn, they'd call and say the chair was done. And could we bring him another one because he's so happy. Yeah.
Holy Lord.
But that was the work ethic that they grew up with. That's what you had to do to survive back then.
I'm the last year of the baby boomers. I was born in '64. And I see that difference between, you're right, my generation and maybe my children, perhaps just a tad bit older, is in my house, the motto is work first, and then you can go out and do something enjoyable later.
Do what you have to do before you do what you want to do.
Do what you have to do. I like that. Do what you have to do before you do what you want to do. I like that a lot.
Said in my house very often.
I can't even tell you how much I get done by 9 o'clock in the morning.
Especially when they're all still asleep.
Oh God, I love it that way, right?
Yep.
It's a shame I don't drink coffee because I could sit there with my cup of coffee, but anyway,
Oh, I take it with me on the run.
yeah.
What other areas do you think we have to work on?
I think in addition to the school system and in addition to the fact that we desperately need a new fire station.
You're going to be happy when they close the little one in North Woburn?
No, it's sad, but I don't want to sacrifice lives for a quaint little fire station. That's just heinous. That's just heinous. Another area in which we desperately need to work is the DPW is understaffed
Definitely.
and overworked.
Definitely.
Ferrying the work out to contractors doesn't always make good business sense.
Yeah, I'd like to know whether it's cost effective myself.
Exactly.
Yeah. In the 70s, there were 80 men on the DPW.
And what I understand is that by attrition, once someone left, they were never replaced.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Okay, got
But
it.
we're down to about less than 30, if not 20
And
right
if
now.
it took 86 to run a city this
Right,
size,
and we've grown.
okay, granted, now we have faster trucks, still,
Oh, nicer trucks.
nicer trucks. I've heard from the firefighters that consistently the firefighters are working OT, and the chief concern is that when one is working too much OT, then you're tired, and that's when injuries happen. And I saw it in my own staff.
And
I
the
managed a
budget
hotel.
goes out of mind.
And the budget goes out of mind. The adage that, the age-old adage in business is that you don't pay overtime. It's better to bring in someone else because you're paying overtime, and in the end it's not cost effective. So if the concern is that we don't want to bring in someone new because we don't want to pay benefits, but we're paying extra money in overtime and workers' comp because people are getting hurt because they're working too many hours, it's not cost effective.
Do you find that on the police department?
I don't know.
Yeah, when they publish the highest paying salaries, there's some of them that do quite well.
And you know what, now that you say that, you are not wrong. There are some who do quite well, and now that you say it, a good chunk of that is due to overtime or special details, which I'm sure that at the end of the day, a paycheck is nice. However,
But they work for it too.
well, and
You don't find many of them asleep under a bridge
that's not helpful.
or
That's exhausting.
or
Where's your-
not, aware that a need is that their response time is pretty dang good.
I have, there was a time when I first announced my candidacy, there was a time when I have 3 children. My daughter is 27 and went through this school. My youngest is 18 and just went through the school system. My middle child is 23. There was a time when I was leery as to whether I would talk about him or not. And then at some point I decided I did everything possible that a parent could do. He is 23. He disappeared for 9 months. I only just found him last week. He's been gone for 9 months. He has 3 mental health diagnoses and a limited IQ. And there was a night when I drew that unofficial line in the sand when he went after his father, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And he was so mad, his father was afraid and went in the bathroom and shut the door, and my son punched a hole through the bathroom door. And that was my line in the sand. And I called for police backup. And the young officer who responded said to me, Mrs. Lochrie, do you think this is funny? We don't like to arrest people.
But you had told me that it wasn't just the Woburn Police. You didn't find it the necessary help that you needed.
You are absolutely
all
correct.
along, like 10 years.
Oh, yes. You and I have,
Many a crisis came and went.
yeah.
And I'm told at meetings and conventions that the governor has allotted this and they're going to do this, but you couldn't find help for him
You're
no
right.
matter what. And it's usually the middle of the night.
It's usually the middle of the night or when it's 27 degrees outside. You're absolutely right. You and I have spoken about this before. You're absolutely right. There is a dismal lack of mental health help, not only here, but
Well, there's
everywhere.
more mental health issues, and what they think is enough was enough 10 years ago, not now.
Is not now. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I think our police officers work very, very hard. I also strongly feel, having dealt with it yourself, you're right, myself for many years, there has to be, many people with mental health issues are not criminals. People with mental health issues don't do what people do out of maliciousness or to be angry or to steal. People with mental health issues, sometimes when mental illness is rearing its ugly head, don't have the wherewithal to access services. And so therefore it's easier to go into a 7-Eleven and steal a bag of potato chips because I'm hungry right now. Maybe arresting isn't the best answer, and you're right, it's not just here. And I think that Woburn does a fairly good job, actually.
Given what they have to work with.
Given what they have to work with. It's an understanding of how this mind works, and it's just different.
And the older policemen signed on when translating handicaps, mental health, all those things, they weren't even taught. So they, I'm sure, have to be recertified and trained. But it's not the same, as we well know, of what you grew up with all your life. We're at 24 minutes.
We are.
Which means you have 4 minutes to tell your community why you want to be mayor and why you'd like them to vote for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. I do not want to be the mayor of Woburn. I want to be the person representing the entire city at large. I can't do this job. I have a business background, which is needed to run a city. I have sensitivity. I have empathy and sympathy. Right now I work for an agency which supports people who have intellectual disabilities. People don't do what they do, again, out of maliciousness. People do what they do because old habits are inbred. So I firmly believe in education. I come from a long line of educators. But more than just that, I actually was on Facebook yesterday, and someone sent us something, don't remember what it is, doesn't matter, but I said, if I were to be your next mayor, what would you want to see in me? And I got a lot of responses back, but my favorite response was, excuse me, please be the person who listens to us. Don't judge us, listen to us. And you don't have to know all, you don't have to have all of the answers. You have to be willing to listen, and you have to be willing to ask questions, and you have to be willing to say, I need help. I love that answer. I love that answer. And I wrote back to this person and said, thank you for reminding me of why I do what I do, and I'm asking your help. If I ever forget those, please knock on my door and say, you promised. You need to get your head on straight.
And that does happen.
Sure it does.
Especially when they get elected. I find it happens more when they're re-elected. They really are now surrounded by politicians,
Okay.
yes men, and not people who, for whatever reason, would dare say, no, you can't do that, because after all, he's your powerful mayor.
Okay, that's helpful.
So I think you're very wise to solicit help. I'll be the first to tell you, but I don't think it'll happen. I think you've researched what is, would you quit your job?
Absolutely.
Because years ago it was a part-time job, believe
Yeah.
it or not. Not anymore. And then there's a
Full-time
social
job.
quadrant too.
Not
The
an issue.
wakes, the funerals, the anniversaries.
I already do all of those. Because people matter. Because people matter. You're not a city. Okay, a hotel is not a hotel. An anniversary is not just an anniversary, it's people. People who are celebrating their, well, in my case, their 29th anniversary. It's people whose, God forbid, father passed away or mother passed away. My own father has Alzheimer's. He turned 80 last week. We went down and had a party because this might actually be the last time we can have a party for him. People.
Community. It's
Community.
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 Common unity.
Is that what it actually meant for? I didn't know that.
If it wasn't, I like it that way.
I like it that
makes
way,
sense
too.
to me,
Common unity.
And
Common
that-
unity.
and that's what you want.
And I need to not forget that, is that it's the people. It's not the system. It's not the whole city. It's not the name of the city. It's all the people.
Thank you for coming to see us.
Thank you for having us.
Good luck.
Me.
That's it. Kerstin Lochrie, right? I say it right.
Lochrie.
Lochrie.
Like Loch Ness.
Have you seen a ballot? Do you know where you are on the ballot yet? I just got back in town after a month, so I haven't seen anything.
Where'd you go?
A lovely beach in Maine.
Good for you. Yeah. I've heard that the first name on the ballot is mine. I cannot prove that.
It's a good spot.
I thought so too.
Good luck.
Thank you.
That's it for now from Conversations with Veronica. See you next time. Bye.